Ladies and gentlemen, SCSP is honored to welcome the final speaker of the evening, the Honorable François-Philippe Champagne, Canada's Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, who is joining us virtually for a fireside chat with John Gallagher, Managing Director at Cerberus Capital Management.
All right, we've got you now. Mr. Minister, great to see you. And let me say first to the audience, truly what a privilege it is to welcome Minister François-Philippe Champagne, the Honorable, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, the Secretary of Commerce equivalent. But before we get started, I need to point out a little glitch in the schedule. I noticed that you are the closing speaker from 5 to 5:20, but the schedule says that the reception starts at 5 and runs till 7. Literally forcing me to utter the following bad joke: rather than go to the reception to drink, stay for champagne.
Well, that's what I was saying. That's good.
No.
If you have champagne as a, to start, it's not a bad thing. And I just want to say to you, John, and to everyone who's there, to apologize. Actually, I was meant to be with you in the United States, but we just finished a discussion with President Macron of France. He was just visiting in Canada, and interestingly enough, we did talk about AI and energy. So it could not be more topical, because I just finished rush from a meeting with him and the Prime Minister to join you today. But honestly, I would have been with all of you there, because we have no closer partner than our friends in the United States, and certainly delighted to be with you today, albeit virtually.
That really means a lot, Mr. Minister. One thing I'd like to do right now, if I can, a little bit of a change, is I'd like to ask Ely Bajraktari to join me on stage. You know Ely well. We've spent a lot of time together over the last year. I'm up here by myself. He's a lot prettier than I am, and I may even let him ask a question before the moderation is over. So, Ely, say hi. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
So,
nice to meet with you virtually.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor for us to have you virtually, but over to John.
So Ely and I regard Minister Champagne as unique among leaders in Canada, and it's hard to imagine really many leaders in the world better prepared at their respective national levels to lead their countries. Not only has he been a leader in business and law in the private sector, but he has served Canada at the ministerial and cabinet level. Starting his public service in 2015 as a member of Parliament, he has served as the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Minister of International Trade, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is a Secretary of State equivalent, and now the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry since 2021, again, the equivalent of the Secretary of Commerce. Mr. Minister, we welcome you and would like to hand it over to you for any opening comments, and then we have some questions.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you to you, John and Ellie, for putting the summit together. I must say, I'll just reflect a bit on what I hear at the G7, but I can tell you it is phenomenal, the space that AI has been taking in international discussion in just the last few years. The last G7 meeting, Secretary of Commerce we had in Italy, almost half of it was around AI and what we need to do. And therefore, I would say there's no better time to really frame the discussion. For me, I often say to my colleagues, if we want to move from fear to opportunity, we need to build trust. And we need to put a framework that gives confidence to people that AI will be serving humanity. And I think this is still a question out there, and foster responsible innovation. And I just finished, like I was saying, a launch with Yashua Benjo, Jan LeCun, a number of people who are obviously thought leading in the sector. And the nexus, which I like that you brought, between AI and energy could not be more clear. There will not be AI if there is no energy, obviously. And therefore, that nexus as to how, even in the North American context, how we're going to be able to cope with that. Gary Cohn has been very vocal in terms of, if you look at the production, the generation of energy and the demand, the two lines are pretty much in sync. If you add the digital economy to it, if you add AI, quantum, obviously there's a disconnect. And therefore, I think there's never been a better time to talk about AI and energy, because I think part of the answer is a North American partnership between the United States and Canada, and how we can achieve that so that we have an AI, we are able to power AI and we are able to gain productivity, because I think productivity for us is a key issue, and I think AI is going to be a lot of, will be part of that journey to tackle productivity. So I just want to say it cannot be more topical. We just finished a launch talking about that with one of the foremost leaders in Europe, and therefore quite happy to be with you today and engage with you and bring the discussion wherever you want to be, and certainly happy to share what we did in Bletchley Park with former Prime Minister Sunak in the UK and what we discussed with our European partner. But obviously, let's start at home between the United States and Canada, because that's where it starts for all of us. How can we work better together, have the computing power that we need, have the safeguard in place to foster innovation?
Thank you, Mr. Minister. A good friend of mine who leads an organization called Securing America's Future Energy said he sees the United States as the bullseye, and the first ring around that bullseye is Canada. And it reminded me to something that you've said over the last year, referring to the relationship as the essential relationship. Of course, for it to be the essential relationship, there need to be shared priorities, shared contributions, and a real tangible foundation to build upon. Can you tell us what the essential relationship means to you, and how do you see this moment in the bilateral relationship going forward, and how do we build on that essential relationship?
Well, very much so. And I think, in the world where stability, predictability, and the rule of law is in high demand and short supply, I would say that the essential relationship, and that's something that I quote because, I was saying from a Canadian perspective, we need to move from just being a nice neighbor to a very strategic neighbor. And the way that I present that to our U.S. friends, not only in Washington, with governors, with senators, with obviously members of Congress, business leaders, the business roundtable, mayor across the nation, is really the first thing we're essential when it comes to security. And why? Because we've been blessed by geography. We share the longest unguarded border in the world, and therefore that's something we need to cherish, and therefore our security is a joint endeavor, whether it's to NORAD or to NATO. We are bound to work together to ensure the security. So that's the first thing. We're essential in terms of relationship when it comes to supply chain resiliency. And after COVID, I would say global supply chain are becoming more regional. And I'll give you two very practical examples, two that you both, John and Eli, know well. The first one is around critical minerals. And I mean, proximity is everything. Proximity to resources, to market and assembly line, as some of the speakers said before. To me, that is really a cornerstone of our relationship, because Canada is home to about 3/4 of the critical minerals that have been identified by the Department of Energy and a number of key stakeholders in the White House. And therefore, if you look at the world, Canada is the NATO nation which has all the critical minerals, not only to build the semiconductors, which are going to be the DNA of progress, but also to allow us to go towards the battery or electrification of the electric vehicle and this electrification that you're seeing around the world. So therefore, that is very critical. Another one that we did recently was around titanium, something that we talked about, John, very much when you were in town. Canada now has displaced Russia as one of the largest supplier of titanium. And obviously that is very critical if you think about with titanium you do powder, with powder you can do 3D printing, and with 3D printing of titanium powder, you can repair parts of jets in theater of operation. So those are just two examples that in my view are very key when you talk, essential in terms of supply chain resiliency. And the third one would be it's the essential relationship when we have a growth agenda. I have to commend the administration for having the vision, and some of the panelists before were talking about that, that we have deep capital market, a great innovation ecosystem, a great discovery with research centers across, but also what we need to bring back is manufacturing, to be able to build things here. And therefore, I think in that, we can have a growth agenda for North America. And that's why when I look around the world, if you look at, there's, war in Europe, tension in the Taiwan Strait, obviously conflict in the Middle East. And when I talk to investors, when I talk to CEOs, they certainly are looking for stability and predictability. And last year, You may have seen that the U.S. was the first country in terms of attracting foreign direct investment. The second was Brazil, and the third one was Canada. But obviously, if you adjust it on a per capita basis, north of 60 billion was invested because companies like Dow Chemical, companies like BHP, companies like Honda, like Volkswagen, wanted to be part of this growth agenda in North America. And I think this is serving both our country because at the end of the day, what we need to create jobs, we need to create prosperity, and we need to create, possibility for the next generation. So I think we're in a very good place. I mean, I'm one of those who look at the issue and you can either see challenges or opportunities. I think the 21st century is really a place where North America can lead. And certainly, that message that I carry around security, supply chain resiliency, and a growth agenda, I would say when I talk to Republicans, they say, well, we love you, Minister, because you talk business. When I meet Democrats, they say, we love you, you're aligned on policy. So I think these issues are nonpartisan. They're in the realm of what we need to achieve to foster growth, to foster innovation, and to foster prosperity on both sides of the border.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Minister. Keying on something you said early in that answer is supply chain resiliency. And of course, it's not country by country, it's North America for us. And of course, critical minerals are absolutely important, but when we look at the transformational tech and innovation battle that we're in, upstream from that, supply chains, upstream from that, critical minerals, as we've talked about, I want to remind you of some other areas that you've shared with me and Illy in the past where you think they represent sort of real sort of tangible building blocks of this next level U.S.-Canada relationship. You said artificial intelligence, semiconductors, of course, critical minerals, quantum computing, small modular reactors / nuclear, biomanufacturing, hypersonics, space tech, and robotics. I wanted the room to hear truly what Canada is able to offer in this deepening relationship with the U.S. that speaks to that tech and supply chain problem set as you've defined it.
Well, totally. I mean, I'm one of those who believe that certainly critical mineral is almost the oil of the 21st century because you're going to need that to power the economy of the 21st century. So I think you start with that. The other sector which you've highlighted, and I've been really looking with a number of governors to look at the strategic supply chain we have, and semiconductor is a good one. I'm sure a lot of folks who are in the room may not have heard, but 80% of all the semiconductors which are packaged and tested in North America are packaged and tested in Canada, in fact. So therefore, when we've been looking at critical supply chain, we said we should really have a corridor between Albany and Montreal, in fact, because that's where the IBM facility is. That's kind of the resiliency that I think we need, because one thing is that we need to innovate more, we need to do more research, but we need to manufacture more here. And that's why I'm a firm believer in the semiconductor initiative that we started with Secretary Raimondo and our friend at the National Security Council is smart because we need to close the loop. If you look at the critical path of manufacturing, we need to make sure that that critical path is certainly including the closest ally to the United States, which is obviously Canada. Now, when you look at critical minerals, I think when you were there with Eli last time, John, I submitted to some of our NATO partners. Part of the challenge we have in North America is speed and scale. And I'll give you an example. The first time when I was appointed Secretary of Commerce, came down to Washington, and I was saying to our friends down in Washington, say, by the way, do you know that there's only one refinery of cobalt? And as we all know, cobalt is going to be key for manufacturing an electric vehicle and generally electrification. And people look down and they say, is that true? And he said, I guess you're going to tell us where it is. I said, yeah, it's in Cobalt, Ontario. And everyone started spawning and said, by the way, it took more than 10 years to permit. So good luck if you want to have one. The smart thing to do and the right thing to do for me is about scale. We should all invest so that we have at least one cobalt refinery that can serve both markets. And I think those are the kind of verticals where you're talking semiconductor, where you're talking about critical mineral. And the other one you touched upon is energy. Small modular reactor. The summit is all about AI and energy. If you look at the energy consumption linked to the digital economy, there is no doubt that we'll have to look at different form of energy. And clearly, renewable energy or sustainable form of energy are key. As you know, Canada is close to 80% renewable energy, but obviously the demand on energy has never been greater because as you're looking at the megatrend in the economy, and I think I've heard that from someone on a panel before, you're looking at decarbonization and digitization. So on the decarbonization side, a lot of people are looking at electricity to decarbonize steelmaking, production of aluminum, and production, I would say manufacturing of a vehicle, other heavy industry that you either need to decarbonize with electricity or natural gas. The other one is obviously around digitization, which obviously we're going to need a lot of power to do the nexus between quantum and AI. And in that, I think there's a unique opportunity, again, between the United States and Canada. We together, if you look at the original equipment manufacturer, the engineering capability, the talent pool we have, we probably together, through obviously private business, well, we have about 50% of the nuclear install base in the world. And for me, it just makes sense that as you're looking to expand the capacity that you're going to need in order to be able to provide energy to the servers that we're all going to need in jurisdictions that we feel comfortable to put our data, we certainly need to work together. And if there is a place that I think SMR certainly would certainly make sense, because, you know, what you need when you put these servers, and many of you would know better, you need a very stable geology, but also when you have, you know, cold climate, you save energy. But obviously in these regions, the generation, transmission of energy is more challenging. So we'll have to look. I think some of your speakers said nuclear fusion. That's interesting as well. I think we'll have to really put our minds together, because the future in terms of AI and all the possibilities it can provide in terms of productivity and changing our lives for the better is incumbent upon us to produce more energy. And how we're going to do that is certainly something we need to put our minds to. And obviously, I think citizens on both sides of the border would commend us to make sure that we produce renewable energy or sustainable form of energy to power these data centers.
Billy?
Mr. Minister, back to me for a quick question before we end the day. We heard all day today sort of like the transformative moment we live because of the technology, AI, and requirements that it's putting on the energy. And the panel just before you talked about the transformative nature of this technology is going to have on the society and national security and everything. But at the same time, we're living at a really important geopolitical moment in which, you know, our main competitor, China, has almost the identical list of technologies they want to dominate that John just listed to you. So what are some of the U.S.-Canada joint views on how do we address that challenge in this decade as we build, you know, a resilient supply chain, next generation technologies, you know, the energy that required for next generation models? And what do you see some of the, you know, problems that we need to overcome in this space?
Well, I think we certainly need to do more together. I think, you know, to face China, we'll need to cooperate much more. We'll have to remove somehow, you know, the barriers and think more in a North American context. And it's interesting, your question, because at the round table I was with the Prime Minister and President Macron, there was someone very smart that said that most AI model that we have seen, that we know now, will be obsolete in 5 years. And it just reminded me that humanity is thinking, you know, in a very linear way, but when it comes to be exponential, our minds are not very framed to think exponentially. What's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years? And for me, it seems that time is accelerating. Although physicists would disagree with me, but certainly as a, you know, someone who lives in a family with you know, my daughter's looking at this, and certainly as government, you see that these things have accelerated in a way that we have rarely seen before in humanity. So for me, I think the answer to that is us first, between the US and Canada. Look, for example, when we put the AI Safety Institute, we need to work together on that. We need to amend our computing capacity. You know, otherwise, it's great to have the talent, but computing power is the name of the game. And there, I think there needs to be public-private partnership. I don't think that governments would necessarily be able to fund all that, but we need to find a way so that we have the computing power that it's going to be needed. And then I would say, I will put it to you, and I think we really need to emphasize on supply chain. Where are we going to build these chips for quantum? Where do we build the chips for the supercomputer? And make sure that we have on a critical path so that we're not vulnerable. Because, one of the things behind the CHIPS Act and the IRA, in my view, was to address vulnerabilities that we identify in our supply chain. And somehow, if you want to put that in the geopolitical context, we have to think, if there was a blockade in the Taiwan Strait or anything like that, what would it do to the world economy and even the supply chain that we have come to rely on? So I think we need to be smart. I think we need to be thinking long term. And I think the only way we can address that, and there's not two nations which are better suited to work together, because, we're part of the Five Eyes. We share intelligence together. We're part of NORAD together with NATO partners. So when the nexus between security, supply chain, and growth, for me, is perfect in North America, because there's no two partner who can do that better than us together. And I think whether it comes to, a framework for AI, a safety institute, critical path for our supply chain to make sure that we have both the critical minerals, but also the energy needed to make sure that we have prosperity in the 21st century, is something that we are working on. We're working with our friends in the White House. And I think, whatever administration I think is there would see the benefit of fostering security, supply chain resiliency, and at the same time building a growth agenda for both of us. So, and I know that I'm taking a lot of time, and with the name of Champagne, I know that people are probably thinking about the cocktail more than anything else. If you had a great day, I'm happy to be with you, albeit virtually. And try to my staff never want me to promise to attend things too much in advance, but at least I can promise that I'll try as hard as I can to be with you, because you both, John and I, you do amazing work on between the Canada and the U.S. The intelligence you've shared and the foresight that you have provided is very much welcome. And I'm grateful that you have allowed us, your essential partner and best friend, to be part of this great summit today.
Minister Champagne, you know how special the Strategic Competitive Studies Project is, and they have filled this room with incredible leaders and experts throughout D.C. and broader U.S. We're really honored that you're with us, and we look forward to continue building the dialogue and the relationship with you, and till we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The class was excellent. Thank you, everyone. Otherwise, thank you.